see about the blood supply of spinal cord. First we will see about the blood supply of spinal cord. The spinal cord is highly vascular. It is supplied by anterior spinal artery, two posterior spinal arteries and segmental arteries. Before going to blood supply directly, we will first revise about the fissures and sulci of spinal cord, which we have already done at the time of external features of spinal cord. Now here you can see this is the transverse section of spinal cord, showing this is anterior median fissure where anterior spinal artery lodges. This is posterior median sulcus through which a septum made up of nervous tissue enters in the substance of spinal cord to the variable extent. Then on either side of anterior median fissure, there is presence of anterolateral sulcus. Through the anterolateral sulcus, anterior or ventral root of spinal nerve emerge out. Ventral root of spinal nerve comes out through the anterior lateral sulcus. Similarly, there is posterior lateral sulcus. Through the posterior lateral sulcus, the posterior or dorsal root of spinal nerve enters. It enters in the spinal cord. And thus here you can see this is the anterior median fissure through which anterior spinal artery runs. This is anterolateral sulcus through which the anterior or ventral root of spinal nerve emerge out. This is posterior lateral sulcus through which posterior root of spinal nerve enters in the spinal cord, and at this level posteriorly there is posterior median sulcus. Now let us see about the blood supply at anterior spinal artery. Now where it arises, what is its course, how it is formed. Let us see. The anterior spinal artery is present. It is formed in the cranial cavity. It is present. It is formed in the cranial cavity in front of medulla. Here you can say this is the pons and this one is medulla. And the anterior spinal artery is formed in the cranial cavity in front of medulla with the help of two small spinal arteries, which are the branches of fourth part of vertebral artery. So here you can see this is the fourth part of vertebral artery, and these are the two small spinal branches which meet with each other, which join with each other in the center and then run downward along the anterior median fissure throughout the spinal cord. Means at the up to the level of L1 vertebra. Below the L1 vertebra, it continues with phylum terminale. Below the L1 vertebra, it continues with phylum terminale. What is phylum terminale? We have studied this. It is a thin thread-like filamentous structure which is non-nervous, extending from lower end, means that from the L1 vertebra to the first coccygeal vertebra. So the anterior spinal artery extends up to the first coccygeal vertebra. Now let us see the course of vertebral artery. As we know that the vertebral artery is a branch of subclavian artery, and subclavian artery is coming from arch of aorta directly on left side, whereas on right side it is coming from the brachiocephalic trunk. It has four parts. First part extends from the origin up to the foramen transversorum of 6 cervical vertebrae. Second part extends from the 6th cervical vertebra to the 1st cervical vertebra, and the third part extends from the foramen transversorum of 1st cervical vertebra to the foramen magnum, and the fourth part extends from foramen magnum to the pontomedullary junction. Above pontomedullary junction, two vertebral arteries, they unite together and form a basilar artery which runs in basilar sulcus of pons. Now let us see the another artery, which is nothing but the posterior spinal artery. Posterior spinal arteries, they are two in number. They are also formed in the cranial cavity, and they are also branches of vertebral artery. Sometimes it may arise from posterior inferior cerebral artery, which is again a branch of vertebral artery. So the posterior spinal arteries, they are two in number. They are arising from vertebral artery or posterior inferior cerebral artery, which is a branch of vertebral artery. Now the posterior spinal artery, they run along the posterior-lateral sulcus. There are two posterior-lateral sulcus on either side of posterior median sulcus. So the two posterior spinal arteries, they run along the posterior-lateral sulcus. But as we know that to the posterior-lateral sulcus, there is attachment of posterior root of spinal nerve. So these posterior spinal arteries gives two collateral, one on medial aspect, another on lateral aspect of the posterior spinal artery, and thus there are each artery gives two collateral, and thus there are four longitudinal arteries along the posterior part of spinal cord, and this posterior spinal artery supplies posterior 1/3 of the spinal cord, whereas anterior spinal artery supplies anterior 2/3 of spinal cord. Thus, you can see here the spinal cord is surrounded by 5 longitudinal arteries. So one artery anteriorly, that is anterior spinal artery, another 4 arteries, that means each posterior spinal artery gives 2 collateral arteries. Thus there are 4 longitudinal arteries and total 5 longitudinal arteries around the spinal cord. If you see the diameter of these spinal arteries, it is very small. So the blood flowing through these spinal arteries is not sufficient to provide nutrition to the entire spinal cord. And that's why it is reinforced. Both the anterior and posterior spinal arteries, they are reinforced by the segmental arteries. So here you can see anteriorly the segmental artery is reinforcing the anterior spinal artery. Similarly, posteriorly also, they are reinforced by the segmental arteries. So what are these segmental arteries? These segmental arteries, they are present outside the vertebral column. And these arteries, they are branches of different regions of spinal cord. As we know, spinal cord has 4 regions: cervical region, thoracic region, lumbar region, and sacral region. So from these regions, the branches, they arise. So the segmental arteries, they lie outside the spinal vertebral column, and these are branches of, for example, in the cervical region, they are branches of deep cervical artery and ascending cervical artery. In the thoracic region, they are coming from the posterior intercostal artery. In the lumbar region, they are coming from the lumbar artery, whereas in the sacral region, they are coming from the sacral arteries. Thus, these segmental arteries, they are present outside the vertebral column. They are coming from different regions of the spinal cord. Then how these segmental arteries enter in the vertebral column? These segmental arteries enter in the vertebral column through intervertebral foramen. So the segmental artery enters into the vertebral column through intervertebral foramen and divides into anterior radicular artery and posterior radicular artery. That means anterior and posterior radicular arteries, these are branches of segmental artery. Remember, radicular arteries, these are branches of segmental arteries. Radicular arteries run along the anterior and posterior nerve roots respectively. The anterior radicular artery reinforces anterior spinal artery, posterior radicular artery reinforces posterior spinal artery. And thus there is formation of 5 longitudinal trunks. Here you can see this is the anterior spinal artery and this is the anterior radicular artery. So the anterior spinal artery is reinforced by the anterior radicular artery, and thus there is formation of 5 longitudinal trunks around the spinal cord, and these trunks, they are communicating with each other with the help of arteria corni or arteria vasocorona. So the 5 longitudinal trunks which are present around the spinal cord, they are communicated with each other with the help of another set of arteries which is known as arteria corni or arterial vasocorona, and they form pial plexus. So here you can see they are forming pial plexus, and the branches of these pial plexus, they supply the superficial part of the spinal cord, and thus there are 5 longitudinal trunks around the spinal cord. Now let us see the course of segmental artery. So in the thoracic region, this is the posterior intercostal artery. And this is the branch of posterior intercostal artery, which is called segmental artery. Now this segmental artery enters in the vertebral column through intervertebral foramen and divides into posterior and anterior branch, which is called as anterior and posterior radicular artery. Now this anterior radicular artery reinforces the anterior spinal artery, posterior radicular artery reinforces the posterior spinal artery. Now here you can see the anterior radicular arteries, they are longer than the posterior radicular arteries. Why? Because the anterior radicular arteries, they have to reach anterior median fissure where anterior spinal artery lodges, whereas posterior radicular artery has to reach up to posterior lateral sulcus. Hence, posterior radicular arteries, they are smaller than the anterior radicular arteries. And that's why number of posterior radicular arteries are more. Posterior radicular arteries, they are 12 in number, whereas anterior radicular arteries, they are 8 in number. The peculiarity of these radicular arteries is that these are the end arteries. What do you mean by end arteries? The arteries which do not anastomose with each other, they are called end arteries. What is its significance? If these end arteries, they get damaged, they get occluded, they get thrombosed, the area supplied by that particular artery get damaged, it becomes ischemic. Otherwise, in any other arteries, they are anastomosic with each other. Courses the entire length of spinal cord and then runs along with phylum terminally. Posteriorly, there are two posterior spinal arteries, which are again branches of vertebral artery, or sometimes they are branches of posterior inferior cerebellar artery, and these arteries run along the posterior lateral sulcus. And as there is presence of posterior root of spinal nerve at posterior lateral sulcus, these arteries use two collateral branches, one medially, another laterally, and thus there are four longitudinal arteries posteriorly, one longitudinal artery anteriorly. As the diameter of these arteries is very small, it is not able to nourish the entire spinal cord. So these arteries, they are reinforced by the segmental arteries. Segmental arteries, they lie outside the vertebral column. They are coming from the different areas of the spinal cord. So this segmental artery enters the vertebral column through intervertebral foramen, then divides into anterior and posterior radicular arteries. Anterior radicular artery reinforces anterior spinal artery. Posterior radicular artery reinforces posterior spinal artery. These arteries, they are forming plexus called pial plexus. They are communicating with each other through the arteries known as vasocorona. So this is about the blood supply. But there is one more important artery which also supplies the spinal cord. Which is that artery? This artery is called as arteria radicularis magna. It is called as arteria radicularis magna or artery of Adamkins. This artery is very large bore artery. It is present on the, yes, any problem? It is present mainly on one side. It is unilaterally present mainly on the left side, and it arises either from the posterior intercostal artery or directly from the descending thoracic aorta. So the arteria radicularis magna or artery of Adamkins is a large artery coming directly from the descending thoracic aorta, or it may come from the posterior intercostal artery. The peculiarity of this artery is that it is unilateral, mainly on left side, and its site is not confirmed. It may arise between T9 to T12 vertebra. Now, if you see the entire course of spinal cord, then here you can see the anteriorly, the artery is supplied by anterior, the cord is supplied by anterior spinal artery, posteriorly by posterior spinal artery, and again they are the anterior and posterior spinal arteries, they are reinforced by the segmental artery through radicular arteries. Now, this picture is showing the area of spinal cord supplied by that particular artery. Anterior spinal artery supplies anterior two-thirds of the spinal cord, whereas posterior spinal artery supplies the posterior one-third of spinal cord. Now, there are certain areas, there are certain zones, there are certain spinal segments where anatomically there is less blood supply, and these are the zones which are normally more prone for ischemia. Which are these sites and why they are responsible? They are vulnerable for the ischemia. Anteriorly, at the level of T1 and L1, there is less blood supply. Why? Because the radicular arteries which reinforces the spinal cord, they are present, they reinforces the spinal cord below T1 and below L1. Similarly, posteriorly, at the level of T1, T2, T3, there is less blood supply. So, these are the areas which are more vulnerable for ischemia whenever there is decrease in the blood flow in the spinal arteries. So, that is all about the blood supply of spinal artery and spinal cord. Let us see about the venous drainage of the spinal cord. How the venous blood is drained. There are 6 longitudinal veins that drains the spinal cord. So the spinal cord is drained by 6 longitudinal veins. 2 veins, they are present in the midline, 2 are present in the anterolateral sulcus, and 2 are present in the posterolateral sulcus. Let us discuss this. Here you can see these are the 2 venous channels which are present in the median plane. Anteriorly, there is anterior median longitudinal venous channel present in the anterior median fissure. In the posterior median sulcus, there is posterior longitudinal venous channel. In the anterior lateral sulcus, just posterior to the anterior division of spinal nerve, there is anterior lateral longitudinal venous channels on either side. Similarly, along the posterior lateral sulcus, there is presence of posterior longitudinal venous channel. Thus, there are 6 longitudinal venous channels, 3 anteriorly and 3 posteriorly, 6 longitudinal venous channels which communicates with internal vertebral venous plexus and then drain into vena cava plexus, azygos plexus or basilar venous plexus. Now let us see the certain syndromes related with the blood supply of the spinal cord. What means by syndrome? Syndrome means group of signs and symptoms. First, we will see about the anterior spinal artery syndrome, which is also known as Beck's syndrome. Why it occurs? It occurs due to occlusion or compression of anterior spinal artery. What are the conditions which causes compression of the anterior spinal artery? Spinal artery can be compressed because of any tumor, or it may be occluded because of formation of thrombus. So whenever there is occlusion or compression or any part of the spinal artery is damaged, it will affect the certain part, that particular part of the spinal cord. As the anterior spinal artery supplies anterior two-thirds of the spinal cord, so most of the structures which are present at that level, they are damaged. So what are the different structure? Mainly the tracts which are present in the anterior two-thirds. In the anterior two-thirds, important, this is the descending tract, that is corticospinal tract. Lateral and anterior corticospinal tract. Then ascending tract, mainly the spinothalamic tract and some autonomic fibers. These are damaged. So what will happen if there is damage to the corticospinal tract? What is the function of corticospinal tract? Have you done the yesterday's homework? I have already told you that please go through the pathways and functions of the various tracts. So what is the function of corticospinal tract? The corticospinal tract is responsible for conscious voluntary movement, fine, skilled, precise movement of distal part of the limb. So if there is damage to the corticospinal tract, the voluntary movements below that lesion, they will be absent, they will be damaged. So if there is interruption of corticospinal tract, there is loss of voluntary movements below that level. Then what is the function of spinothalamic tract? Spinothalamic tract is responsible for pain and temperature sensation. It carries pain and temperature sensation from opposite half of the body. Here there is no question of opposite half because both the halves are damaged. So there is loss of pain and temperature sensation below the level of damage. Then if autonomic fibers they are damaged, what will happen? If there is damage to the autonomic fiber, there will be hypotension, there will be sexual dysfunction, there will be bowel dysfunction and bladder dysfunction. So in anterior spinal artery syndrome, there is interruption of corticospinal tract which will lead to complete motor paralysis below the level of lesion. As there is interruption of spinothalamic tract also, there is loss of pain and temperature below the level of lesion, and also there is autonomic dysfunction. But the posterior column tracts, they are intact. So the function of tracts which are present in the posterior column, which tracts are present in the posterior column? Tract of Gall and tract of Burdock. What is the function of these tracts? They are mainly responsible for fine touch and conscious proprioception. So fine touch and conscious proprioception is intact. So how will you diagnose whether it is a anterior spinal artery syndrome or not? The diagnosis is done with the help of MRI, and treatment of this condition is we have to treat the primary cause. If there is a tumor which is compressing the anterior spinal artery, we have to remove that tumor. If there is any thrombus in the spinal artery, we have to dislodge that thrombus. Now let us come to the posterior spinal artery syndrome. It is very rare because the posterior spinal arteries, they are 2 in number. Again, they are giving collateral arteries. So it is very rare. And if it occurs, what will happen? Posterior spinal artery supplies posterior column, posterior 1/3 of the spinal cord. And in the posterior 1/3 of spinal cord, there is dorsal column system, dorsal column tracts, tract of Gall and tract of Burdock, fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus. And the function of these dorsal tracts is that they are mainly concerned with proprioception. What do you mean by proprioception? Sense of vibration, sense of position, joint movement, 2-point discrimination, stereognosis. All these are concerned with the proprioception. All the sensations which are recent or advanced sensation, they are carried by the dorsal root. So that we have already discussed. So if there is damage to the posterior spinal artery, there will be loss of proprioception, there will be loss of vibration, loss of 2-point discrimination below the level of lesion. Now let us see the applied anatomy. Actually, we have discussed most of the applied part of the spinal cord along the particular part of the spinal cord. But there are certain diseases, there are certain syndromes that you must know, which are related with the spinal cord. The first disease, first syndrome is syringomyelia. What is this syringomyelia? Syring means cavity, mylia means spinal cord. Cavity in the spinal cord is called syringomyelia. So in the syringomyelia, there is development of cavity or cavities in the central canal or around the central part of the spinal cord. Why it occurs? It may be congenital or it may be acquired. In congenital, there are certain, again, syndrome that is known as Arnaud-Chiari syndrome, which is related with the pathology in the posterior canine fossa, or acquired causes like myelitis, means infection, inflammation of certain tissue of the spinal cord. These are the causes which are responsible for syringomyelia. And what will happen if there is syringomyelia? Generally, syringomyelia occurs in the cervical region. It occurs in the cervical region, and there is formation of cavity. As there is central canal, this central canal becomes enlarged. So there is formation of cavity in the central part of the spinal cord. So what will happen? What are the different structures which are present around the central part of the spinal cord? Let us see. Now this is the transverse section of the spinal cord, and here this is the site of central canal. Now in the syringomyelia, the central canal is enlarged. Normally this cavity enlarges anteriorly. So what is here at this level? Here there is anterior white commissure. What happens through anterior white commissure? Through anterior white commissure, the fibers of spinothalamic tract, they cross to the opposite side. We know that spinothalamic tract is responsible for pain and temperature sensation. So, and it carries pain and temperature sensation from opposite half of the body. Now let us see. This is the cell body of first order neuron. Central processes, they are entering in the ventral gray column, and they terminate in the nucleus, which is responsible for pain and temperature. Which nucleus it is? It is nucleus of, yes?
Dorsal nucleus. Clark's column.
No, Clark's column, no. It is posterior cerebellar nucleus. Yes. Okay. Then there is formation of second order neuron, and these second order neuron, they cross to the opposite side. They cross to the opposite side. Now here there is an anterior white commissure. Similarly, on the right side also, the fibers, they are coming, again they are crossing. So these decussating fibers, these crossing fibers, they are damaged. So what will happen? If these both the fibers coming from right and left side, they are damaged, so further pain and temperature will not go, and this particular type of loss of pain and temperature occurs. So this particular type of area is affected. So as the lesion is common in the cervical part, so there is loss of pain and temperature sensation in the upper extremity, upper part of the body. Actually, the manifestations will depend upon the size and site of the lesion. It may, in case of females, we can generally see that these females, they will have lot of burn injuries over their hands because they are not aware of that burn because they have lost pain and temperature sensation. So if the lady is coming to your OPD and she has lot of pain, burns, and she is not aware of the pain and temperature, then the spot diagnosis should be syringomyelia. So in syringomyelia, if you see in the syringomyelia, the fibers which are going to the dorsal column, they are not affected. The fibers, they are going to the dorsal column, they are not affected because the dorsal column fibers, they pass through the fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus, and they run up to the medulla where they cross. So these fibers, they are not affected. So there is sense of proprioception is preserved. Sense of proprioception is preserved, whereas there is loss of pain and temperature sensation below the level of lesion. And this condition is called dissociative sensory loss. Means the patient has loss of pain and temperature sensation, but the patient will have knowledge or sense of proprioception. Means 2-point discrimination, sense of vibration, then stereognosis, all these sensations, they are preserved. And again, the manifestations, they depends on the site and size of lesion. Now let us see the another syndrome, that is known as Brown square syndrome. Now there may be a short note on Brown square syndrome. So what is this Brown square syndrome? In Brown square syndrome, there is hemisection of spinal cord. Half of the spinal cord is cut. cases, what are the condition in which the half spinal cord has gone? There may be bullet injury, there may be stab injury, there may be knife injury, or there may be compression of the spinal cord by any tumor. So what will happen if there is half part of the spinal cord is damaged? Here first we will see this is the transverse section and this is the half part of the spinal cord which has damage. So what will happen? Half part is damaged. So what are the various tracts which are present in this part? Dorsal column tracts, corticospinal tract, spinothalamic tracts. All the tracts, they are damaged. Now, what are the various symptoms? For that purpose, you should know about the entire pathway of each tract. Now, let us see here. This is dorsal column related with proprioception. Normally, the function of dorsal column is it is related with fine touch and proprioception on opposite half of the body, normally. But in Brown square syndrome, it affects the same side. Why? Let us see later. Then corticospinal tract, it also controls voluntary movements on opposite half of the body. But here in Brown square syndrome, again there is upper motor type of lesion on same side. Whereas loss of pain and temperature sensation is on opposite side. Why this is so? So in Brown square syndrome, there is ipsilateral upper motor neuron type of paralysis. There is ipsilateral loss of proprioception below the level of lesion, but there is contralateral loss of pain and temperature sensation, and also there is Horner syndrome due to loss of autonomic fibers. But why this is so? First, we will discuss about the pain and temperature pathway. Now, in pain and temperature pathway, we have seen the first order cell bodies of the first order neuron. They are present in the dorsal root ganglion. Central processes they enter in the posterior gray horn. They relay, and second order neuron they arise, and they now the fibers from the right side are going the left side and then they go up. Whereas fibers on left side, they are going to the right side and they go up. But here there is damage, so they will not go up. So there is loss of pain and temperature sensation on opposite side. Clear? Now what about dorsal column sensation? Dorsal column sensation of proprioception. Now for that, again you should know the pathway of dorsal column. So again, the first order cell bodies of the first order neuron in the dorsal root. Central processes, they are not going in the gray matter of the spinal cord. They are going to the fasciculus gracilis and fasciculus cuneatus, and then they are running up to the medulla. In the medulla, they are going in the nucleus gracilis, nucleus cuneatus, and where they relay and second order neuron starts, which cross to the opposite side, they form internal arcuate fibers which run upward as a medial lemniscus. That we know. Now here, dorsal column also carry proprioceptive sensation from the opposite half. But in Brown square syndrome, there is loss on same side. Why? Because the crossing is occurring above, the lesion is below, and crossing is above, and that's why there is ipsilateral loss of dorsal column sensation. Are you clear? Yes. Now coming to the corticospinal tract. As we know, the descending tracts, they have only two neurons, upper motor neuron, lower motor neuron. Descending tract mainly responsible for conscious skillful movement of distal limb on opposite side. So what is upper motor neuron? Neuron which extends from the motor cortex to the motor neuron in the gray matter of spinal cord, anterior gray matter of the spinal cord. Lower motor neuron from the anterior horn of anterior motor neuron to the effector organ. So there is lower motor neuron. Now what happens in the corticospinal tract? Now here you can see this is the lesion. This is a descending tract. So the fibers here also they are crossing, 80% fibers they are crossing in the medulla. Fibers they are crossing above the spinal cord. Lesion is in the spinal cord, and that's why there is ipsilateral paralysis. So here is this is the site of lesion. So at this level there is damage. So whatever the fibers they are present here, they are damaged, and this is the lower motor neuron from the gray matter of the spinal cord to the effector organ. This is lower motor neuron. Again, this is the upper motor neuron, and this again blue color is the lower motor neuron. Means there is loss of lower motor neuron at the level of lesion, and below the level of lesion there is below the level of lesion there is upper motor type of paralysis. Are you getting something? So please go through the tracks. If you have any query, ask me, because this is very important. There is a short note on Brown square syndrome. So in case of corticospinal tract, as the crossing is above the spinal cord, lesion is in the spinal cord, so there is ipsilateral loss. So at the level of lesion, there is lower motor neuron type of paralysis. At the below the level, there is upper motor type of paralysis. On the same side, this is the site of lesion. So on the same side, there is upper motor type of paralysis. So what do you mean by upper motor paralysis? Now, in upper motor, why it occurs? Normally what happens? Upper motor neuron, they control the lower motor neuron. But when the upper motor neuron, they are damaged, there is no control over the lower motor neuron. So the lower motor neuron, they get exaggerated. So what will happen? There will be increase in the spasm of the muscle. That is known as spastic paralysis. There will be increase in the reflexes. Condition is hyperreflexia. There will be increase in the tone, hypertonia. And as the muscles, they are not used, there is slight atrophy of the muscle. That is known as disuse atrophy. Fasciculation, when twitching of the muscle is absent. It is present in lower motor neuron because the muscles, they are become more sensitive to the action of acetylcholine. Whereas these superficial reflexes, they are lost. Babinski's sign is positive. What is Babinski's sign? If you stroke the sole from lateral to medial, normally what happens? There is flexion, or that is known as plantar flexion of all the fingers. But in upper motor paralysis, everything is up. So the thumb goes up. That is dorsiflexion of the thumb and fanning of other fingers. That is known as Babinski's sign. Whereas in the lower motor paralysis, there is no tone, so there is flaccid paralysis, there is hyporeflexia, there is hypotonia, wasting of the muscle is more. So that is the difference between upper and motor neuron lesions. Another condition which is related with the spinal cord is stapes dorsalis. What is this stapes dorsalis? It is a degeneration of posterior white column and posterior nerve. Why it occurs? It occurs because of complication of syphilis. Because of complication of syphilis, there is occurrence of stapes dorsalis, and hence in stapes dorsalis, there is loss of function of dorsal column. What is the function of dorsal column? Proprioception. So there is loss of proprioception. Again, there is positive Romberg sign. So here you can see this is the level at which there is stapes dorsalis, which is a late complication of syphilis caused by Treponema pallidum. So there is loss of proprioception below the level of lesion. And if the patient is asked to stand feet together and eyes closed, he will not able to stand. He will stagger and fall down. That is known as Romberg test. The another condition is posterior rhizotomy or podotomy. This we have already discussed. In rhizotomy, we are cutting the appropriate posterior root. It is done mainly in chronic back pain. Whereas chordotomy, we are cutting the trunk of spinothalamic tract. This is done as a palliative treatment in many malignancies. So that is about the all the conditions that are related with the spinal cord. So we have completed the entire spinal cord, that means external features of the spinal cord, internal structure of the spinal cord, ascending tracts, descending tracts, blood supply, and applied anatomy. Generally, there is a long question on spinal cord about its external feature, and we have to they may ask you about any one tract, which may be ascending or descending. If ascending tract, generally spinothalamic tract is asked, and if it is descending, then corticospinal tract is asked. Then always there is short note on blood supply of spinal cord and Brown square syndrome.